I've visited Bangladesh 3 times in the last 3 years to work on water-related stories. The story you'll see, which is about bringing water to slum dwellers in Dhaka, is from my last trip, but I've also worked on transborder water and climate change stories in Bangladesh. So I'd like to offer a little more context to the piece that you'll see. While many countries with growing populations around the world face water scarcity, or will face water scarcity in the coming decades, the riverine and densely populated country of Bangladesh will likely face threats in the short term from too much water. So much life and culture in Bangladesh revolves around water that it seems a cruel irony that water also threatens millions of lives annually in that country. Of course, there's the danger posed by floods, cyclones, and the riverbank and coastal erosion due to climate change, but perhaps the most pressing danger comes from drinking water, or I should say, the lack of safe drinking water for a growing population. Bangladesh is already one of the most densely populated countries in the world. It has some 150 million people in an area roughly the size of Iowa. Dhaka, the capital, is part of a worldwide historic shift in population from rural to urban areas. With 15 million people, it's now one of the fastest growing cities in Asia. Just like many other developing countries, people are moving from rural to urban areas in search of paying jobs and opportunities. But urban centers in Bangladesh face an added pressure posed by climate change, which is already displacing tens of thousands of people. Scientists predict rising sea levels will flood 1/5 of the country in the coming decades, creating some 20 million internally displaced people or climate refugees in need of shelter and jobs. Among the 5,000 slums in Dhaka, you will find many slums named after coastal and riverside communities already threatened by rising water. The displaced live in metal shacks, bamboo sheds, and they usually work the least desirable jobs. Most men, for example, run pedal rickshaws to earn only a few dollars a day. So the migration's already started. With some 400,000 new residents arriving each year, Dhaka is straining under the pressure of its rapidly swelling population. While its city leaders face huge challenges in delivering critical services to its residents, it is the provision of clean water and sanitation in urban slums that is most urgent. In the past few decades, Bangladesh has made huge strides in improving water, sanitation, and hygiene in rural areas, but I was surprised to learn that most WASH programs proven to work in rural areas, were lacking or just not feasible in the slums of a rapidly growing city like Dhaka. In fact, millions of urban poor lack legal access to city water and sewer systems. For these people, the cost of obtaining water is very high. They live in overcrowded shanty towns with unhygienic toilets, and they pay up to 15 times more for water than someone who has a city water connection. And too often, they pay for the lack of safe drinking water with their lives. Another thing I learned from this story is that the daunting water and sanitation problems caused by rapid urbanization are not insurmountable. These problems can often be solved at low cost, with hygiene education, and by harnessing local knowledge and tools to improve and extend the water and sanitation services already available to the public. While Dhaka certainly has unique challenges, it is by no means alone in its struggle to provide safe water and sanitation. Large slum populations in Haiti, Brazil, Kenya, Indonesia, and even along the US-Mexican border face similar problems. Over 90% of diarrhea-related deaths are due to unsafe drinking water and poor sanitation and hygiene practices. And each year, diarrhea kills more children than HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. This is truly a global problem, and a reason I think water and sanitation stories qualify as crisis reporting. The hope is, and you'll see in this film, the hope is that the model for providing city water to slums developed in Dhaka can be scaled up and perhaps even exported to other megacities around the world, where already more than 1 billion people call urban slums their homes.
Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is one of the world's fastest growing cities and one of the poorest. As in many other developing countries, people are leaving the countryside in search of work and a better life in the city. Dhaka's population, now estimated at 15 million, is expected to hit 20 million by 2025.
Dhaka is one of the megacities which is growing too fast.
Country Director for the charity WaterAid, Dr. Khairul Islam, says the increased population density is severely taxing the city's ability to house and care for its people.
Almost 5,000 slums are in and around Dhaka city, and almost 1/3 of the population are living in either low-income communities and slum areas. Most of them don't have ownership over those pieces of land that they're residing. But the main challenge is provisioning essential services for this huge number of population, mainly water and sanitation.
With 2,000 newcomers daily, the struggle to find clean water in the slums often has life-threatening consequences.
Water? Yes, we have water, but the water is not always available. When water is available, it is often bad. Yesterday, a woman here thought she had cholera. She went to the hospital, but she died last night.
If you want to see the human toll exacted by unsafe water and poor sanitation in Dhaka, you come here. This is the overflow tent at the short stay unit at Dhaka's main cholera and diarrhea hospital. This man arrived at the hospital with no vital signs. After 15 minutes of trying to revive him, his wife is given the news. The staff records cholera as the cause of death. The hospital's lead research scientist, Dr. S.K. Roy, and his colleagues work around the clock 365 days a year to save lives threatened by waterborne illness. The majority of the patients here are the urban poor, and the hospital care is free.
We are now having about 400 patients every day. But in August, September, sometime we go up to 1,200 a day. And I can tell you the average of a year is 120,000 patient average in a year. So this hospital is a quite busy one. Most of them having E. coli diarrhea, cholera diarrhea. Then we are having a typhoid patient, quite high number. So these are coming through water and hand behavior, hand contaminations.
Most diarrhea patients are released within 12 to 24 hours of receiving treatment, but at a nearby clinic, 2 newcomers to Dhaka have been battling the illness for 5 days. Fazila Begum believes her baby, Saeem, became ill after drinking water from a shared well. When the baby is finally cleared to leave, the attending doctor warns Fazila that Saeem is in precarious shape and needs safe drinking water, regular meals, and rest. Fazila rents a small room at a nearby slum for $20 a month. She shares cooking, water, and toilet facilities with 25 neighbors. Neighbors say the shared well provided by the landlord is not deep enough to avoid contamination. Many here complain of frequent dysentery, and the evidence, small packs of saline rehydration solution, is everywhere. Fazila knows the conditions are unsafe, but she already pays more than she can afford to live here.
If we move, we'll have to pay more.
The job of supplying safe water to residents belongs to the Dhaka Water and Sewage Authority, DHAKA'S for short. Residents need city approval before they can extract water or connect to city water pipes. But approval to use city water is only given to residents who can provide proof of land ownership. This leaves 4 million slum dwellers without legal access to city water. With few options, they end up paying high prices for suspect water supplied by slumlords, or they buy costly bottled water from the roving carts of water sharks. Still others tap illegally into city water pipes.
DHAKA'S was with the system that was tied with house ownership. That actually pushed us to talk with DHAKA'S that why it is not possible to provide water to slum dwellers.
Deebalak Singha lobbied the city to give a water license to his startup NGO on behalf of slum communities.
They explained at that time that they are giving water only to people who has their own houses. So we tried to facilitate that service to slums, linking them with the Dhaka Water and Sewerage Authority.
Linking slums to city water services meant Deebalak's NGO assumed the risk if the slum dwellers failed to pay their water bills. But Deebalak knew the slum dwellers, who pay 15 times the DHAKA'S rate for water on the black market, would pay their bills.
A win-win situation actually occurred because DHAKA'S, they wanted their revenues. On the other hand, poor people, they want the service, and they immediately see the economic advantage of getting access to DHAKA'S water supply because that is cheap.
in comparison to private market. So in that way it started.
NGO-backed water access points like this one are now sprouting up in the slums all over Dhaka. Each community forms a water committee that pays to install the pump and for the costs of operation and maintenance. These committees also collect and pay the water bills. The success of earlier NGO-backed water points now enables community groups in slums to negotiate directly with the city for legal water access without NGO help.
Anybody living in urban slums, they can apply for the service, and if they are willing to pay for the service, DHAKA has no problem.
Today there are over 1,000 water connections in 100 slums, but that leaves some 5,000 slums with no such service.
Still today, there are slums and squatters where these services are not available.
With new residents like Fazila and Saim arriving every week, the need for more city-to-slum water connections will remain urgent.